Well, the House and the Senate compromised version, they have come together in an agreement over the National Defense Authorization Act. It's expected to come up for a final vote later this week in the House. Yesterday, key military service organizations announced their support for the NDAA, which they said provides service members and their families the support they need. The annual defense policy bill has also been praised for weeding out the woke policies at the Department of Defense that have made it hard to recruit and to keep good service members. And it left out the language that the Senate version had included to force women age 18 and older to register for selective service, something that my next guest helped lead the charge against in the United States Senate. He was here on the program last week talking about it. You responded, and that language came out. With me now in person to talk more about this is Senator Josh Hawley of Missouri. He serves on 4 Senate committees, including the Senate Judiciary Committee and the Committee on Homeland Security and Governmental Affairs. Senator Hawley, welcome back to the program.
Thank you. Great to be with you.
And congratulations on, yes. I need one of those soundtracks during the week so I can always have a crowd with me. That language is out.
It's out. It's out, which is a big victory. As we talked about last week, it never should have been in the first place, Tony. It's an absolute affront to women, to families, to our sense of the differences between male and female, which, of course, the left is trying to erase everywhere we look. But it is out of the bill, which is a tremendous victory. And now we can go forward and continue to do what we need to do to get the military out of the abortion business, which they're currently in as well.
Right. And just for a review, for the benefit of our audience, one of the concerns about forcing women to register for the draft, as the military has had difficulty in recruiting and in its retention because of its woke policies, that many of which were pulled out in this latest version, I think the reality of going back to a draft is real.
It is real. I mean, particularly as we continue to proliferate the number of conflicts we're involved in. You look at what this administration's done, the path they've led us down. We've got conflicts all over the world. They've committed us in resources and troops, all kinds of places. So the possibility of a draft is a very real thing. There's a huge shortfall in retention and recruitment. And forcing women to register, again, compulsory registration, is something that they were looking at to try and stem that tide.
Now, you previously served on the the Senate Armed Services Committee. You're now on the Judiciary Committee, but you've got a lot of military presence in your state of Missouri, so you keep up with those issues. Are you satisfied with the current version of the National Defense Authorization Act?
Well, I'm still reviewing the final text. It hasn't come over to us yet in the Senate, so I want to look and see exactly what passes the House.
So you're not of the Nancy Pelosi School of Government where you pass it, then read it?
Yeah, I prefer to read it first,
okay.
As a general. Yeah, just, an idea. Unusual in Congress, but just an idea.
Okay.
But I do think that, listen, it's a huge improvement to get out the draft our daughters language. It is a major win to have language in there that prevents the military healthcare service from spending money on transgender surgeries, which is good. I'm concerned that the Biden administration has been spending hundreds of millions of dollars on transgender surgeries through the VA, which I don't like at all. So I want to look carefully at all of that language. But listen, I think this is headed in the right direction, and there's going to be a lot more work to do under a Trump administration.
Do you see more accomplishments on weeding out some of the policies that the Biden administration has put in place in these last 4 years? I mean, recall in 2016, Donald Trump ended a Barack Obama-era policy of transgenderism in the military. Is it possible to go back and revisit these things that have undermined the effectiveness of our military?
Oh, it is. It's not only possible. I think it's absolutely necessary. And, I'm sitting down with Pete Hegseth, the president's nominee for Secretary of Defense. It's either tomorrow or the next day. And this is something I look forward to talking with him about. I mean, we've got a lot of work to do to get our military back to being the most lethal, ready fighting force in the world. That's their job. Their job is not to be a social experiment for the left. Their job is not to be an anti-family, anti-woman organization. Their job is not to be an experiment in transgenderism. It's to protect us. And I know the president understands that, and I hope that this will be a top priority for him and for his new defense secretary come January 20th.
Speaking of our military, and as you mentioned, the conflicts that we have been engaged in, the world's a very volatile place. With what we're going to talk more today about Syria, with the fall of Bashar al-Assad. I cannot recall a time certainly in my lifetime, but I think going all the way back to World War II, maybe even beyond, where we've seen the world so unsettled.
Well, and that's exactly right. And we're facing a peer competitor in China. This is something that none of us have seen in our lifetimes. You think about the Soviet Union, how powerful they were. They never had an economy ever to rival ours. I mean, it's sort of close in the 50s. After that, we blew them away economically. China is already with us toe-to-toe economically. Their military is larger than ours is. So we've got them. We've got Russia, of course. We've got North Korea. We've got Iran. I mean, we've got a lot of problems in the world.
Right.
And this is why it's important to have a new president.
I would agree that about the assessment of China. In fact, I think China is probably the greatest threat, maybe not the greatest short-term threat, but it is clearly the greatest long-term threat to this country.
Absolutely.
What do we need to be doing on that front?
Well, we need to be sending the clear message that we're not going to allow them just to expand indefinitely all across the world. We're not going to put up with their imperialism. And we need to be also sending the clear message we're not going to allow them to cannibalize our economy, which this current president, has absolutely allowed. We are right now, Tony, paying Chinese auto manufacturers who make electric vehicles. We are sending them tax subsidies to make electric vehicles in China and then sell them back to us at a premium. That's our tax money. I mean, it is unbelievable.
But you would think after COVID, when they withheld the personal protective devices that we needed from the disease that they created,
that's right,
that we would have rethought this relationship and brought more of that manufacturing onto our own shores, or at least into our own hemisphere.
And we haven't done any of that. And in fact, this administration's gone in the opposite direction. Their Green New Deal is just a code for massive giveaways to China. China has benefited so much. Solar panels, where are they made overwhelmingly? China. Wind turbines made in China. And not just made by anybody, made by slave populations, the Uyghurs, who are an enslaved religious minority. And here we are literally financing that. It's insane. It's absolutely insane. We've got to stop that.
And there's a personal responsibility there, too, especially as we come up on the Christmas season, people shopping.
Yeah.
I always turn it over to look at made in where.
You bet.
And there's so many of our products. It's becoming difficult to actually find products not made in China.
I think we ought to say to these foreign manufacturers that are based in other countries, whether it's China or anywhere else, if you want to have access to our market, you've got to make a certain percentage of your goods in the United States of America with American labor.
Well, and certainly not be hostile to the values that we as a nation say we uphold. And I think that was the idea back in the 1990s with the agreements with China with most favored nation status, that it was going to change them. Unfortunately, I think it's changed us more than it's changed them.
And just look at the NBA. I mean, you remember LeBron James just a few years ago advocating for what was happening in Hong Kong, dramatic crackdown on democracy in Hong Kong, and LeBron James is out there defending the Chinese government. Why? Well, it's all about the money. They need the access to the Chinese market. This is your point. It's changed us, not them.
We have elevated the dollar more than the almighty.
That's right.
When it comes to the values and the morality that this country was founded upon. We just have about a minute and a half left. One quick question. As you were Attorney General of Missouri, you did a lot on big tech, tracking them and what they were doing to exploit the American people. Do you foresee, given what we saw during COVID, what's come forward with this administration, is there going to be a crackdown on big tech?
I hope so, and I hope one of the things we'll go after is how they're exposing our kids to content about promoting gender transitions. You look at the explosion in gender transition surgeries, gender dysphoria. Where's that coming from? It's coming from those social media platforms, and they know very well what's on their platforms. They know they're exposing our kids to it, and they're making gobs of money off of it.
How do we get at that?
Well, I think what we've got to do is give parents the ability to protect their kids. And right now, these big tech companies, if they take a picture of your child off your Facebook page and they exploit it, and they expose your kid to child pornography, or they turn that picture into child pornography, you can't do anything about it. You can't sue them. You can't challenge them. You can't get a hearing.
Section 230.
Section 230. We got to change that.
All right. Well, hopefully we'll get at that in this next administration. Senator Josh Hawley, always great to see you. Thank you for your leadership on the Hill. Thank you for fighting for faith, family, and freedom. And thanks for joining us here today on
Thanks for
Washington
having
Watch.
me. Thank you.